Hi, everybody. I just wanted to talk to you about this week's lesson. We're going to take what we did last week, which was developing characters using Google Drawings, and we're going to build on the information we got last week. Last week, you talked about basic tools, how to work with shape, when to use outline, when not to use outline. We're going to focus more on that today. Last week, it was just about the characters. And if you want to develop your characters further and use them this week, that's fine. If you don't want to, that's fine too. But we're going to focus on drawing. I'm going to show you a little bit about how you can use a photograph to trace, but it's not going to be in the end result. I want to make clear the end result for this project is going to be drawing digitally as opposed to photographic. And the focus or the concept that we're going to work with is public outreach regarding some aspect of this quarantine period that we've been in. It might be focused on heroes that you see throughout this period, like the nurses and the doctors, grocery store clerks and garbage collectors and all of these people who ultimately are essential workers, and you could focus on them, or whatever you want. Maybe it's how it's affecting you in your senior year, or you want to talk about online schooling, or staying 6 feet away or wearing masks. Whatever aspect of public outreach you want to make, you have an audience, and you're going to illustrate it mainly through your image. You can use a little bit of text, like a title or a hook, but it shouldn't be a paragraph about this period. The image should speak for itself. Okay, and in the process, we're going to develop your hopefully make more development of your compositional skills and the tools that you're comfortable with in Google Drawings. And I'm going to flip to the screen and we'll take it from there. Okay, everybody in your Google Classroom will have these notes. It's actually developing what we did last week. If you scroll back, you'll see this was last week's character study, dealing with shapes and drawings and color. Moving on, it says part 2, quarantine posters, and we'll talk about some basics. So I'm going to put that aside for a minute. And first thing I want to talk about is page setup. So I have a blank Google Drawing document, which each one of you should have in your Google Classroom. And if you decide you want to bring in something that's vertical, you can make your page vertical by clicking this little corner down here. Okay, it can be that simple. If you want to bring in a photograph, you can go to insert up here, and there's an image there, or you can see it right here, and you get a choice of where you want to get it from. Sometimes it's in Google Drive, sometimes you can search directly on the web. In this case, I am going to go to my desktop, go to computer graphics, and pick an image. I'm not going to actually go through the entire thing with you. Let's just say I'm going to take this one for the time being. Now, before you crop, I took this photograph knowing that I was going to use it for this project. And because of that, I left some room up here because I know I might want some sort of hook to draw people in or to explain it. Ultimately, this photograph is not going to be part of it. Ultimately, there's not going to be a lot of words. But I can decide, Control Z. I want to make sure I go to crop. You can crop a photograph and make it smaller. Hit enter. And I always want to hold shift to keep the proportions accurate. So I want a little bit of words up there, but I don't want a ton. I would make it cover the entire page. And again, I can change the shape of my page to work with what I'm doing. Okay, so one of the things I want you to think about is grouping within groups to make your life easier. in addition to that, before we even get there, just to review, this is going to be about the tools we talked about that you can fill directly from the color options up here. Okay. We don't have any color options because we haven't drawn anything yet. Line will not let you fill it. Scribble will not let you fill it. Even if I close that circle, I'm not going to be able to fill that circle. If I come up here, go to shapes, pick a circle, remember hold shift if you want to keep a square, square, or circle, circle. Now I have something that I can fill. These are the tools you want to use. And now I have my ability to fill and outline, change the line weight and the quality of the line, and so on. So we're not going to just draw with a scribble tool. You're not going to color in using a thicker scribble tool. Okay, so it has to be a shape that you can fill. That's number one. And the things that will do that for you are this curve tool. Okay, let's go to curve. Every time I click, I'm clicking on the mouse, and when I let go, it's going to curve. And I can close that and it will fill. Okay, polyline tool will do the same thing, only it will be more angular. Now, I've seen people use the polyline tool and click, 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 click. I just unclicked it, so this one isn't working for me. But if you want to do a curve, try using the curve tool. If you want angles, use the polyline. Selection tool is the same. So we're not going to spend too much time with that. But what you want to do is think about areas. I might do an area that's the face. Let's see. Let's go back to the curve tool. I'm just going to pick the hat for the time being. Or let's do the face. Okay, so I'm going to take the curve tool, and the thing about it is it's almost better to have a few more points than you need than not enough. And we're never going to see the points down there anyway, so it's a good place to kind of tuck a few extra in there in case you need it down the road. Okay, now I know I'm not going to care about that, but okay, so then you close it and you have a face. Now, I can do a couple things. First of all, let's play a little bit with color. You have all these different colors here that you can choose. I want you this week to get away from outlines and start thinking about implied edges. So we're going to go to the outline color and make it transparent. Okay, you're going to do that pretty consistently. If I want to make a shadow on the face, I can start, first of all, I can Control C, Control V. Now I have two of these. I can line this one back up. And I could also, if I want, for just the time being, take off the color and make that transparent. And if I double click in a shape, it will give me these edit points. We talked a little bit about, I called them end points at one point in the video, but they're edit points. And I can decide to use these and move them around and now create a second shape. Maybe I want to try playing with that sort of shadowy area that's pinker. Okay. And I'm going to take this shape and just, it's not going to matter. I'm not going to see it down here. Okay, but let's just say for our purposes at the moment that we want to do that. Now we can come up and we can color it. Maybe I want a pinker color. Okay. The other thing to think about is that you can do all sorts of custom colors. First of all, you have solids and you have gradients. So I could take and make a radial gradient or a linear gradient and control which way the dark to light goes. Okay, so there's that. I wouldn't use this, but the other thing I can do is I can go to custom in both the gradient menu and in the solid menu. They're slightly different, but I can decide on my own. Okay, so I can come to this end and decide, okay, I want that to be a little bit lighter, and this one I want that to be a little bit pinker. And maybe I'm going to put another one, add another one in the middle, and maybe make that, I actually should have done this I should have showed you the solids first. Now that's a radial pattern that the gradation is taking. If I want to go linear, I could switch it to this. If I want to change the angle, I can make that angle go whichever way I want it to go. So we can play with that. Okay. Whoop, I need to, yeah, I'm in my selection tool. So you can start building this way. Now that's too harsh. And what I should have showed you first is that in this menu, I can go to solid and go to custom, and it'll bring this up. So I can decide what color I want with a lot more concern for specifics. And I can say, okay, I want something that'll be that color. Maybe I want it pinker. And if I continue to do that, maybe I'm going to take and I'm going to go back to solid, create a new custom color, and then maybe I want one that's slightly deeper. And I click OK. All right. Now, I wouldn't use either one of those necessarily. And in that custom menu, there's also there is transparency. So I could take that color and lighten it, come down here, and that makes it a little lighter. I'm actually seeing through to the color underneath. You can see here, this is what it looks like. That's the overlap. But most importantly, I can control my gradient choices when I get to custom even more, because now if I come up here, it's got those colors that I hand-picked for myself. Okay, so give yourself a good amount to choose from and then do that. Okay. So what I would do is build a bunch of different shapes, select them all, and I right-clicked and grouped. So you don't end up with a million shapes that you have to rearrange every time. We could have face there, and then I could do the bandana, and then put them together and group them as we go. Okay? But that's what I mean by tracing. Ultimately, you're not going to see this photo at all. We can take that and just get it out of the picture, and you're going to have a drawing. Okay? I'm going to go now and find you one that I finished so that it's not, I wouldn't say finished necessarily, but one that I've been working on. Same sort of deal. Okay. The face should be grouped. I don't know at this point if it is. The bandana should be grouped. Think about it. If you need to bring something to the back or the front, you don't want to have to take each individual part of this. So I have this whole person grouped. Okay. But within that, I should, yeah, no, not working for me. I should be able to, yeah, there we go. Group the bandana separately. Okay. Group the eyes separately. Yeah. For some reason that's not working right now, but group your bandana together. Group your eyes in the location that you want your eyes to be, and so on and so forth. It'll make your life easier. So a couple things that I want to think about. Fine-tuning. If you look, first of all, if we zoom in a little bit here, we can use this tool. Let's go to a little bit closer. Sometimes you end up with a line on it. So let's just take this eyelash for the time being, and we're going to look at that. Maybe we can even zoom in a little bit more. Okay. You don't always want that outline, but sometimes, like in the eye here, that little pink line is kind of working for us. You don't want it, however, on the eyelashes. This flesh tone got carried over. I want to come in here, and you can see that because that color popped up. And actually, just take it right off. Okay, so there's nothing there. But the other thing is you can give that a little bit more depth if you go in and put a gradient onto it. Like, I didn't like this color brown, but when I come over here, it's the darkest one that's available. So I can go to the gradient tool, make a custom gradient, make this end the darkest one available, make that one a black, and it gives that just a little bit more depth. And I can control, in this one, it's in both of them, they're to the left is darker and to the right is lighter. If I wanted, I can go into that gradient, play with my angle down here, and that just changes the angle of it. Okay, makes it a little more subtle. You can also control how much is brown and how much is black that way. So, couple of other things. I decided I wanted some stitching, and the stitching you can get to up here. You can control the color of it. You can control whether you wanted it tiny little dots or you wanted it more of a line or a dash line. I would make it probably a little more subtle, maybe like that. Those are some things to think about. I don't think what I did for this, actually, I wanted to get that feeling of stitching there. I haven't really finished that part. I did this outside one and I copied it and made it smaller to give that feeling of stitching going on inside there. Okay. This one, I would take it off. I would make it a solid line or no line at all. Select that. And now, even if things are grouped, you can select individual shapes just by double clicking or triple clicking if you have to get the edit points if you want them. So make that a solid line, and I can make it just transparent if I wanted to. Kind of want a little bit of an edge on there just to show the seam. So maybe we'll make that a dark green. Okay. So that's another thing to think about. This part here. Okay, let's go over to this guy for a minute. All I did, first of all, for these shapes, I did not make a million of these little shapes here. If I see how that's sticking out there, I can take that, double click on it, get my edit points, and just pull that back down so it's not hanging out like that. But I can also take one shape, Control C, Control V, move it over here. And rather than try and make it like a puzzle and go and outline all these, and I mean make different shapes, you don't want to outline them. I'm going to take the outline off of that. You can take this, Control C, Control V. I can flip it. I can squish it. I can come in with the edit points and change it a little bit. I can change the color of it. So you can copy a bunch of these and just alter them and put them in there. You don't have to start from scratch and do them all. Okay. But then what I would definitely do is group them together so that you don't have to, when you go to click on the bandana, you can move the whole bandana. Okay. This shape here, okay, I wanted to give that feeling of depth. So I wanted to be able to have a shadow on this side so that these colors were a little bit more muted. Okay. And all I did was I created one shape. Actually, I probably took this outside shape here of the whole thing, copied it, moved these points so that it came over here, and that copy is just half of the bandana, but I didn't have to play with this side because I had copied the one underneath. Once you do that, you can adjust the transparency of it. So originally it was probably, whoop, Control Z, I get the wrong one there. Originally this was probably like that. And then I went in to custom and played with the transparency so that you could see through it, and it became like that. So that's another thing that you can do. Okay. Now, if you look at this, it still seems very flat. I can control my gradient and make that a little darker or lighter. I think originally you can see the darkness was up here. If I went in, let's say, it was like this before. I'm pretty sure it was like that before. You could go in and you can change the angle again of your gradient. Whoops, custom. And I can change this angle. So that if you think about the way the light hits this object, if it's going to hit this part and it's going to be light, it's going to hit that part and going to be light. That whole shoulder would have some lightness. Now, it's definitely different sort of rolls of the fabric in the hood. So you want to have some sort of implied edges to sort of show a little bit of difference from one to the other. And so your gradation can do that. But the other thing that we haven't talked about yet is under format options. There's two places you can find it. You can find it here. And if you can't see it there, sometimes depending on what's selected, it might be just a couple little dots. You can always find it here. You go to format and go down to format options. So that gives you a lot of things. We're not going to talk about all of them today. Size, rotation, position, reflection. We'll do a little bit with reflection just so you know what it is. But drop shadow. Now, drop shadow can be sort of overkill if you're not careful, but I want to show you the difference between this one that has flat colors and gradations and something where we cast some shadows. So let's make this a little bit smaller again and take a look at this one. Okay. You can see the difference. This one has a drop shadow on it. This one doesn't. Okay. And all we do to get that drop shadow is you come over to drop shadow, and there are several things you can control. It automatically defaults to black, probably because I used it before, or it's just what it defaults to in the program. But you can control that. You can come over here, open it up. You can play with the transparency of the drop shadow. Okay, now we're not talking about the object. We're talking about a shadow cast by the object onto the object that's next to it. So this is more transparent as you move to the right. You can control the angle. I can decide I want that shadow up at the top. Now it's on the inside of the hood and the neck. Okay, but we want to be consistent. I can control how wide that shadow is. You don't want it too wide in this case, but I just want to show you what to do. And you can control the blur radius. You can make it a softer, more blurred shadow, or you can make it pretty crisp and have a clean edge. Okay, so if you want the hat to look like it's sitting above the head, then you would put a tiny little drop shadow there. Even if we get in here, zoom in again. Now, this eye, the white of the eye, has a gradient that's a very subtle gradient. So it's a little grayer. It's a radial gradient. So underneath here, it would be white. And it's got a little bit of gray in the corners. So that makes it appear a little bit more rounded. It implies it. I mean, it's obviously not, three-dimensionally round, but it implies that there's some sense of form to it. The eyelash would cast a shadow on the eye. So this actually has a drop shadow on it. If I take it off, you can see the difference, how much flatter it is. Okay, it's subtle. You don't want to overdo it, but that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so that's drop shadows. As far, just for the sake of knowing it's there, what a reflection does, let's say I have a shape. Oh, I don't know. Let's do this. I'm going to take and I'm going to make, let's say I've got ocean. Okay. And I'm going to Control C, Control V. And let's say that's a moon. I mean, let's say it's nighttime. So I'm going to put in nighttime sky, maybe a little bluer. And now there might be times you use this in your artwork for other things, but I'm just basically showing you what's what. So let's say we've got a moon and the moon is white. Okay, and we're going to take off the transparency on it and put this over here. Okay, so you can put a reflection on that. Okay, now that's pretty low, so we'd come down like that and reflect it in the water, give or take. But you can also control some of those things. You can control the transparency of the reflection. You can control the distance out that reflection falls. And you can control the size of the reflection, how much you want it to reflect. And that'll do that with more complicated shapes too, not just a circle. But that's what the reflection tool does. Okay, we don't have a lot of use for it right now. Okay, so let's get that out of there. Something we haven't talked a lot about is send to back, send to front. You can, let's ungroup this one. Okay. Oh, wait a minute, I got the background, so that's not, there's nothing there to ungroup. Okay. Now, you can see the mask is grouped, so, whoop, the mask is grouped, but it wasn't grouped with that. So I can move the whole mask. I don't have to move each individual little piece. Okay. Same thing with the eyes. I would definitely, once you get them where you want them, group them. If I do something and I add something and I want it to go underneath, remember that you can get to the center back, center front in a few different ways. You can arrange, order, center back, center front there. You can right click and you can get to it that way. And you can also hit Control, Shift Control will bring something to the very front. Shift Control and the up arrow will bring something to the very front. If you want to bring it back slowly, you can not hold the Shift key, just control back, control back. It's moving little by little. You just can't see it moving. But so just know there's 3 ways to do that. And it'll do that with an entire grouped object too. So that whole object is grouped. If I hit Shift Control back arrow, it went way to the very back behind the background. You definitely want to use a background, by the way. It can be as simple as this. It really depends on what you're doing. But when you did the characters last week, I didn't expect you to do a background on it because they were character studies, and I knew what we were going to do with it this week. What we're going to do with it this week is we're going to take, and I wouldn't actually do this, but I can take this character. I would make sure it's grouped. It is grouped. Select the whole character, Control C, and then let's bring this one up. And I can, as simple as copy and paste from one Google document to another. Control V. Okay, and now we have Ryan in here. Let's see. I want to make this a little smaller for the time being. Hold the Shift key so we keep them in proportion. And you can combine characters that way. Okay, if I want to move him a little further back, like say behind the girl, I can click on him, Control back, and now he's behind her. Okay, and we can do that with any of these. So you could take the characters that you did the previous week, or you can start from scratch. And it doesn't really need to be characters. It could be toilet paper rolls. It could be you're creating whatever shape you're copying from your photograph. But notice there's no photograph in the finished work. Remember, if you go back, a lot of people did a lot with line that they couldn't close. This one is definitely about implied edges. So we want to get rid of outlines wherever possible. You can do that with several objects at once. This is all grouped, but for one thing, I would get rid of the lines in the hair here. So I would come up to the hair and make that transparent. You can also go in, double click, and make this a little, yeah, let's take these and just give her a different hairdo if you decide you want to. This might be a little spiky up here for a lot of people. You can come down here, hold the shift key, select 3 at once, take those off, okay? And you can always go in, make it more interesting, put a gradient on it, make some division between them. These were upside down, so your gradient is going the other way. If I wanted to change that, I could, like we did before, go back into custom and change this angle to whatever I want it to be, and play with it that way. Okay, I'm not going to take the time to do it right now, but this is the type of thing that you're going to work with. It should not be a photograph in the end, and this is about as much words as you're going to want to have. Okay, let's go back to the other one for the time being. There's one last thing while we're talking about words that I want to talk about. I ungroup that. Sometimes it's easier just to get rid of one thing temporarily. So group it, get this guy out of the way. Go with the one that has the shading on it, and zoom in a little bit more. Now we're going to think about words. Whoop. I already did some words over here. Just a regular text. Be careful, choose what we want to shift, control, arrow that to the front. We want to choose something that makes sense, and then we're going to center it appropriately, or put it where it looks appropriate. It may not be the center. Be very careful of contrast. If this was down here, this is a no-no, big no-no. You can't read the words. Think about the font. You don't want the font to overwhelm you, okay, or overwhelm the viewer. It really depends on what you've got, but use good common sense and intuition on that one. Now, the other thing is, we could take this and make it pop out a little bit more by changing the color of the font, which you can do over here. And we might pick even like a skin tone. We'll connect it to this. You might even put a little drop shadow on there. Okay. Format. Whoop. Here we go. Yeah, there's a little bit of a drop shadow on that now. You don't want to go nuts with it, but you could do that. Okay. So other than that, one last thing I want to show you with related to text. You could come down and do word art. Let's say we're going to do the word quarantine. And I'm not going to put this in there, but I just wanted to show you. If you hit Shift Enter, it will bring you down to the next line. If you just hit Enter, it's going to select it and it's going to give you the word. Okay. You can control the font, you can control the colors, you can control an outline. But the difference is that if you took a regular text box and you squished it, it's going to change the way the words flow. If you take word art and do that, it will make the words smaller and fit within there. Okay? So That's what you want to think about for this week. As always, you can reach me through email or you can reach me through Google Classroom. Don't be afraid to reach out if there's anything you're stuck on. Remember, this is not a photo project. It's a way to push yourself to get stronger with the drawing aspects of Google Draw, which is what we want to use because of the fact we're stuck at home and we don't all have the Adobe programs. So give me a yell if you need anything. I'll be here, and have a great week. This, by the way, is going to have an extended deadline on it. You're going to have 2 weeks on this one, not just one. All right. Bye now. Have a great week, everybody.